Welcome to my YouTube channel. To all of you, my returning subscribers, thank you very much for your support. You guys have been awesome. I am very, very appreciative of all what you do. And if you are dropping by for the first time, please like this video, hit the subscribe button, and strike the bell notification. That way, you will be the first to know whenever I create new content. Thank you very much as you do so. Welcome once again to my YouTube channel. And I'm very happy to announce that I have recently joined the club of those that are referred to as the AWS community builders. And it is a special thanks to all of you, my loyal subscribers, for that happening. So thank you very much. And in return, I promise that I'm going to be churning out more insightful and more purpose made videos talking about all things security in AWS. And in this specific video, I'm going to be looking at the AWS Well Architected Solutions for secure file storage and sharing. We are going to be talking about all things security as it concerns AWS AWS S3, that's the simple storage service. And as usual, once we've laid the conceptual foundations, we are going to go into the console and we are going to be showcasing some of these capabilities using the hands-on approach. This promises to be a very, very, very insightful and exciting session. So thank you very much as you watch and stay all the way to the end. So in this video, we are going to be looking at designing a secure solution for file sharing and storage using Amazon S3. And we're going to be focusing specifically on how to do this in line with the well architected framework. So let's get started. Now, by way of an agenda, we're going to be discussing some of the things we see on the screen. We are going to introduce S3. We'll look at the components of the security file storage and sharing solution. We'll talk about the best practices for secure file storage and sharing. We'll look at a few use cases. We'll see how to align our solution with a well-architected framework, and then we'll summarize and conclude. So let's get started. Now, why do we want our file sharing solution to be secure? That's a very important question. Now, in today's digital age, organizations handle vast amounts of data on a daily basis. So that means that our data sharing solution should be secure. So protecting sensitive information from unauthorized access and breaches becomes very important for maintaining compliance and trust. Now, as a solution, Amazon S3, which is short for Simple Storage Service, gives us a reliable and a scalable solution for secure file storage and sharing. It gives us a lot of security features, including things like encryption, access control, and all of this together is going to be ensuring that our data is protected at all times. So if we leverage S3, then we can ensure that our data is secure, data sharing solution is scalable, and we can easily access our data on the one hand, and we'll also be benefiting from the comprehensive security measures and compliance standards that S3 has to offer on the other hand. So what is S3? Now, like I said, S3 is short for the Simple Storage Service. So what is it? It is a scalable object storage service. It ensures a lot of things. Among them includes availability, security, and performance. It has support for different kinds of use cases like hosting websites, mobile apps, for backing up and storage, as a support for our enterprise solutions, amongst other things. Now, it's got a lot of features, and top amongst those features includes security. So S3 gives us lots of security features, which include encryption at rest and encryption in transit, And all of this will ensure that our data is protected from unauthorized access. It is also a scalable solution, giving us a virtually unlimited storage capacity, allowing us to store our files as our business grows without the need to worry about capacity constraints. It's also a very durable service, giving us a virtually unlimited amount of capacity. We have up to 11 nines of durability, which ensures that our data is redundantly stored across multiple facilities and multiple servers, minimizing the risk of data loss. And of course, there is also access control built in, because there is fine-grained access controls within S3, such as the use of IAM policies, the use of bucket policies, and the use of access control lists. And all of these things allow us to manage who can access our data and what actions they can perform on our data. Now, S3 is also compliant to various kinds of standards like the GDPR, the HIPAA, and the PCI DSS. So let's begin to look at some of the things that S3 offers us in more level of detail, and we are going to be looking at IAM policies and, of course, S3 access points. And we'll start with access points. Now, access points give us a scalable way to manage access to all of our shared data sets. Now, each access point has a unique host name and unique permissions. And all of this will allow us to control access based on specific use cases. What this means is that we can create multiple access points for different applications or different teams without the need to modify the underlying bucket policies. Now, what this does is it simplifies access management and it enhances security because it provides fine-grained control over who can access our data and how they can interact with this data. Now, apart from access points, we also have fine-grained access control. Now, this is important for securing stored files in S3, and we manage this also through the IAM, or the Identity and Access Management. And this allows us to define who can access specific S3 buckets or objects. We will be setting permissions, and we can use that to ensure that only authorized users have the necessary access to all of our data. Now, this level of control is going to allow sensitive information to be shared securely, and is also going to ensure compliance with the different kinds of policies and regulations that we need to abide by. We also have features such as the server-side encryption, or SSE. So what is it? What is SSE? Now, SSE is a best practice for protecting data at rest in Amazon S3. What it does is that it ensures that our data is automatically encrypted before being stored and decrypted when it's being accessed, providing an additional layer of security. And it does all of this transparently, such that the user does not even know what's going on in the background. Now, S3 has a number of options. The first one is the SSE option, or the server-side encryption with managed keys. Now, what this does is that it uses keys that are managed by AWS S3, and AWS is going to be handling key management and encryption processes. And this is ideal for users that want a cost-effective and a simple encryption solution without the need to manage the encryption keys by themselves. Now, we have another option here, which is the SSE KMS. KMS is short for Key Management Services. Now, the SS3 KMS uses KMS for key management, and KMS manages the encryption keys, giving an additional layer of control and auditing. And this can be useful in scenarios where we require more control over encryption keys, and there is the need to meet a more stringent compliance requirement. And then we have the third option here, which is the SSEC. Now, the SSCC here is the server-side encryption with customer-provided keys. Now, this allows users or customers to manage their own encryption key. So they'll be providing the encryption keys, and S3 is going to be using these keys to encrypt and decrypt their data. This solution is useful where we want to manage our own encryption keys and we have specific security requirements that we want to abide by. So another security solution that S3 offers is the pre-signed URLs. Now, pre-signed URLs grant temporary access to specific S3 objects. And this access is going to be allowing users to download or to upload files without the need to have an AWS account. Now, this is going to be giving enhanced security because we will be controlling and limiting access to files. And these URLs are time limited. That is, they are temporary. What this means is that they expire after a period that we'll specify, and that's going to be ensuring that access, of course, is limited to that time, and of course, it's going to also reduce the risk of unauthorized access. And we can combine the pre-signed URLs with access points. So when we combine them with S3 access points, they're going to give us secure access to S3 objects, and it's going to ensure that data is accessible only to authorized users, which will further enhance the security and manageability of the data that is stored in Amazon S3. There are a few best practices that we need to be aware of. Of course, one of it is we want to always implement multi-factor authentication. And that's because multi-factor authentication will enhance security, especially when we are accessing the AWS Management Console. It will do that by adding an extra layer of protection, requiring users to provide 2 or more authentication factors in order for them to gain access to the AWS console. Now, other things we want to do is to rotate our encryption keys and our IAM credentials. Now, I want to do this on a regular basis, and that's going to ensure that security measures are up to date, and is going to be reducing the risk of unauthorized access due to compromised credentials. Now, another thing is we want to enable AWS CloudTrail. And that's because CloudTrail monitors and logs all API activities. And by doing so, it's going to be giving us better tracking and auditing capabilities, helping us in identifying and even responding to suspicious activities in a timely manner. We would also want to implement lifecycle policies. And these lifecycle policies will manage the storage and deletion of objects. To do that efficiently, ensuring that the data is retained only as long as necessary, thereby minimizing the cost that we're going to be spending in keeping our data. And then security auditing on a regular basis is also something we want to do. So we want to do that to ensure that we continuously assess and improve on whatever security measures we have in place. It's going to allow us to identify vulnerabilities. It's going to also ensure that we are compliant with the security standards and security best practices. So what are some of the typical use cases for S3? One typical use case is for creating and hosting a static website. Now, S3 is a versatile and powerful tool, and one of the use cases of S3 is in creating a static website where we can use it to host static content created in HTML with CSS and JavaScript, of course, having images and videos. Now, this is very useful for static websites that do not require any server-side processing. Now, other use cases will be sharing documents securely, and we're going to be looking at a typical case of a legal firm. Now, a legal organization can use S3 to securely store and share sensitive data with any of their clients. They could do that by implementing IAM policies for authorized personnel access, for example, allowing them to be able to access specific files. They could also use pre-signed URLs, enabling secure and temporary file sharing with clients who do not require to have IAM access, for example. And they could also secure those files with server-side encryption to protect the data at rest. And another thing they can do is they can use access points. Now, they could use access points to further refine access controls to be able to meet specific legal and regulatory requirements, allowing that sensitive information to only be accessible through designated access points. Another use case could be media sharing for content creators, for example. So in this case, content creators can leverage S3 to store and distribute media files. And then there could be fine-grained access control, which is going to be ensuring that only subscribers have access to premium content. And then they can securely share the files through pre-signed URLs. Of course, pre-signed URLs here will allow for secure sharing of time-sensitive materials, and encryption is going to also ensure the integrity and confidentiality of media files. So there could also be an integration of S3 access points with the pre-signed URLs, giving additional layer of security, ensuring that media files are only accessible through authorized access points, preventing unauthorized distribution of any of the content that they have. We want to be implementing all of this around the AWS Well Architected framework. So the Well Architected framework gives us a consistent approach for evaluating and improving the design of not just S3 solutions, but our entire cloud architecture. And it is built around 6 key pillars of operational excellence, security, reliability, performance efficiency, cost optimization, and sustainability. For example, to ensure we secure our files and share our files securely, and to ensure that all of this aligns with the well-architected framework, we could implement operational excellence. And operational excellence will implement monitoring and logging through the use of CloudTrail and Amazon CloudWatch in order to track access and changes to S3 buckets. And then we want to automate routine tasks such as access management and lifecycle policies through the use of solutions such as AWS Lambda and AWS Config, for example. Security here would allow us to implement things like the principle of least privilege through the definition of precise IAM policies. And then we could also implement encryption. Want to use encryption at rest and in transit, ensuring that we are in compliance with different kinds of data protection regulations, for example. And we want to regularly perform security audits and assessments. That's going to allow us to identify and to mitigate vulnerabilities, for example. And for performance efficiency, we want to optimize storage costs. And we are going to be doing that by implementing life cycle policies. And these life cycle policies will allow us to transition data to lower cost storage classes. And of course, we want to also optimize S3 storage classes based on the different kinds of access patterns available within our environment. We could also use for performance efficiency, we could use S3 transfer acceleration. Transfer acceleration allows us to speed up our upload and download of large files, and of course, that's going to allow us to upload or create an environment where our users can upload or download large files very, very quickly. On the cost optimization side, we want to monitor storage cost and usage using things like the AWS Cost Explorer, and we want to also implement AWS budgets. We also want to take advantage of things like intelligent tiering that's going to automatically move our data based on the different kinds of access patterns, and it's going to move our data to the most cost effective storage tier, of course, based on the usage of our data. Reliability here, we can enable for reliability versioning and cross-region replication. This is going to ensure that our data is available and durable. And we want to also design for fault tolerance. We'll do that by distributing data across multiple availability zones. So, summarizing, we can see that AWS gives us a robust and scalable solution for secure file storage and sharing through S3. And if we leverage all of the features of S3 on the security side, like IAM policies, S3 access points, server side encryption, and pre signed URLs, then we can ensure that our data is protected from unauthorized access and breaches. And then, of course, on the reliability and scalability side, AWS services allows us to have a solution that is available for businesses that are seeking secure and efficient file management services. So, if we adopt all of these best practices and we follow the detailed implementation steps, which we are going to be highlighting in the next part of this video, then we can enhance our data security posture and we can streamline file storage and sharing. So AWS allows us to confidently protect our data while we are also benefiting from the flexibility and the scalability of the cloud. So we're going to be moving on to the next aspects of this video, where we are going to be demonstrating all of the things we've discussed. I promises to be an exciting part of this video. So please watch on, and I guarantee that you are going to learn a couple of things. Thank you very much as you do so. All right, we are in the demo aspect of this video, and we are going to be showing some of the things we talked about in the PowerPoint presentation. Now, the first thing we're going to be demonstrating is how we will use S3 to host a static website. So I'll just, for sake of completion, I'll just go back to the home, my console homepage, and just show how we can navigate to S3. So I'll just go and get to S3, and that takes us to S3 here. And of course, there's no bucket currently in this region where I am in. I'm in my default region. So I'm going to go ahead and create a bucket. So I'll go ahead and click on general purpose bucket, and then I'll come to click on create a bucket. Of course, it shows my region and it shows the type of bucket, which is the default, the general purpose bucket. I'll give my bucket a name. I'll call it my demo for example, and I'll just accept all of the default. We can see here areas around object ownership saying that ACL is disabled. Block public access settings for this bucket is enabled. Versioning is disabled. I've not included any tags. Encryption, the server-side encryption with S3 managed keys is currently enabled, which is the default, and bucket key is also enabled as well. I'll just go ahead and create the bucket, and we have our bucket created. I'll just get into the bucket, and we can see that the bucket is empty. The bucket is empty, but I'll just show you what the website I want to host looks like. So that's the website there, the basic, very basic website. I just mentioned S3 here as the header, a few points about S3, and I just placed an image here. Very, very basic website. But of course, yours is likely going to look better. So I am within the S3 bucket. I want to go ahead and upload. Another thing I want to show here is that we can see that this is currently on my C drive, somewhere on my C drive. So this is coming from the local computer. So all of the files here is stored on my local hard drive. That's it. So I'll go ahead and upload those same files. I'll just go ahead and click on add files, and then I'll navigate to the appropriate directory. I'll just go ahead and we can see that we've got the files. I'll go ahead and click on upload, and it uploads those two files. Now we can see that my upload has succeeded. We can see the green tick under the status area. Now I'll just click on the image, for example. We can see here that we've got a lot of things going on. This gives me the details, the properties of the image, this current image here. It tells me the URI of the image. It gives me the ARN, or the Amazon resource name, and it gives me the object URL. So if I click on the object URL here, we'll quickly see that it tells me, hey, it's disabled. Of course, it's disabled for a reason, because my bucket is private. So, but there's something very, very interesting I'm going to show you. While my bucket is private, if I go ahead and try to open this, it shows me the image, and that's because it generates a pre-signed URL on the fly. So we see here, we can see that there is a whole string of characters that it generates here, allowing me, or anybody else for that matter that I share this URL with, to be able to access this image. Okay, so I'll just close this. Okay, so we have the same thing is going to be applicable for, of course, the HTML file. So now what we want to do next is, our bucket is still private. Let's go ahead and see how we can change the settings for our bucket by, well, not making our bucket private. Now, to do that, we'll go to the bucket, which is here, and then we'll go to the properties tab of our bucket. So I'll click on the properties tab. We can see all of those settings that are accepted as default. I can come and edit some of them. So I'm going to do exactly that. Now just go down, all the way down, and we can see here, use this bucket to host a website or redirect requests. I can go ahead and come and click on edit, for example, and I'll go ahead first and say enable, and all of the details gives me index document. My index document is going to be index.html, for example. And I'll just, I don't have any errors, I don't have any redirect rules. I'll just save this. But of course, that's not enough to be able to host sites on this bucket. That's just one of the many settings that we are going to be looking at. So the next thing we'll be looking at here will be to do some additional things. We are going to be doing some very, 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 very granular permissions here we are going to set, that's going to allow us to be able to host private websites on this bucket. So I'll go to the permissions tab. Now, from within the permissions tab, we can see that my block all public access is currently turned on. Now, blocking public access means that I will be the only one to have access to the contents of my bucket, and of course that is not going to allow me to host my site. So what I want to do is I want to come and edit this. So I'll go ahead and click on edit here, and I want to turn this off. So I want to go ahead and uncheck block all public access, and I'll go ahead and click on save. It warns me, says, hey, updating the block access for this bucket will affect this bucket and all of the objects within This will result in some objects becoming public. I say, okay, I agree. I'll type confirm. Okay, so I'll go ahead and click on confirm. Now, let's go ahead and see if our bucket is now public. Okay, so I'll go ahead and come this way. I'll just do a refresh here, and I'll just click on this, and then again, it still tells me, I have access being denied, even when I've made my bucket public. Now, this is expected behavior because even when I've made my bucket public, the default permission for my bucket and the objects within the bucket is a deny. So even while I've made my bucket public, I've got to go ahead and explicitly uh, effect some additional changes from within the permission to ensure that other people will still be able to access my bucket. So let's go ahead and see how we could do that. So I'll go to my bucket again. This time I'll go to permissions again. And we can see here that in the policy section, my policy is empty. Now, in a previous video, I talked about policies. I'm going to drop the link in the description. And I said that there are two types of policies that we could have. Well, at least two types of policies we could have in AWS. We could have the identity-based policies that is attached to principals, and the resource-based policies that is attached to the resource itself. Now, in this case, we are going to be specifying a resource-based policy, which is going to be attached to the S3 bucket in form of JSON documents, and we are going to go ahead and specify all of the details that we want to specify that's going to be making this bucket public. So I'll go ahead and click on edit. Now, clicking on edit here, see, nothing. There is just nothing. There's no policy here. And I want to, there are two ways we can create policies. We've got the policy example. If I go ahead and click on the policy example here, it gives us use cases for policies that we might want to apply to our bucket. We see examples of S3 bucket policies. We can see different kinds of policies: granting read-only permissions to a public anonymous user, requiring encryption, requiring SSC, KMS, different kinds of use cases here. So I'm not going to be using this. I'm just pointing this out to show that you could just go ahead, and if any of these use cases suits your requirement, you want to go ahead and just click on copy the policy right there, and go ahead and paste it. Okay. Now, the other way you can do that is you can get more granular by going to select the policy generator, which is what we're going to be using in this case. So I'll go ahead and click on policy generator, and here it allows you to take the process of generating S3 policies into your own hands. So here we can see you have different policy types. We see currently the default here is the SQSQ policy, but see, I want to generate an S3 bucket policy. So I'll go ahead and select S3 bucket policy. Now, what is the effect? Of course, we have a statement here, which is basically, according to this documentation, a description of a single permission that you can use in a statement. So I want to allow. That's what I want. Now, since this is a public bucket, I want to allow all users to be able to read read from my S3 bucket. So I've specified the principal. That star there is a wildcard, meaning that everyone, irrespective of how they are accessing it, should be able to access my S3 bucket. Now, This is where you want to be very, very, very specific. Okay, so we want to select actions, and there are lots and lots and lots of actions here. But what I want is I want to keep it very, 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 very simple. I want them to be able to, uh, for example, get objects. See, I'll just go ahead and select get object. You could select other ones, of course. You could, if you want them to be able to upload and all of that, there are things you could go ahead and do. You can say list bucket, you can say get objects, you can do a whole lot of things here. But I just want them to be able to get the object. Okay. Don't forget you can put multiple actions here, but I'm just to keep it simple, I'm going to select just one. Now, if you wanted all of the actions, you just go ahead and click on all actions, but you've got to be very careful here. Remember that this is public space and you don't want to unwittingly give out information that shouldn't be public. You have to be very, very careful there. Okay, so the next thing is I want to specify the ARN. That's the Amazon resource name for the bucket. So I'll just go to the bucket here and I'll just copy the bucket ARN and I'll paste it here. Okay, so that's the bucket ARN. The next thing I want to do is I want to ensure that I have a slash and a star, for example. Okay, so that means that the bucket, not just the bucket, all of the objects in the bucket should be granted the get object permission. Okay, so this is all I have. I'll just go ahead and click on add the statement. See, that's the statement there. And I'll go ahead and generate the policy. Now, generating the policy, you can see here all of the things I've specified, the policy ID, the version, the statement, the action, the effect, the resource, and of course the principal. So all I have to do is I'll just copy this and then I'll come to my edit policy here and paste it. See? So that's it here. I have pasted this and all I want to do now is I'll go ahead and save changes. Okay? And that's all we need to do. The next thing I want to do is we'll go ahead and test how well what we've done is going to reflect in our S3 bucket. All right, so we are back to my S3 bucket here. We can see the bucket I created, and now we can see the two files that we have here. So I just want to go ahead and click on index.html. And this time around, I'm not going to open it for it to generate a pristine URL on the fly. I'll go ahead and click on the object URL. Remember, in the previous, earlier on, clicking this generated an error page. So I'll go ahead and click on this. Now that we've applied all of the permissions, I'll go ahead and click on object URL. And sure enough, we have our website up and running. Now compare this, look at the URL, clearly specifying my demo static website, VBA S3 US East 1 Amazon AWS.com/index.html. Now compare it with my static. See, I'll just see. This is, of course, this came from that came from my local computer. So that's basically all it takes to host a static website in S3. We're going to continue to demonstrate other things as part of what we talked about. So please hang right there and enjoy yourself. So the next thing I want to demonstrate is how to create a pre-signed URL to allow you to share specific objects in your bucket with anyone that you want to share it with, as long as the person has access to the pre-signed URL. So what the pre-signed URL does is it allows you to grant access to specific objects in your bucket by just simply creating the URL, specifying an expiration period, and sharing it with whosoever you want to have access without the need to specifically maybe create an account for that person within AWS or and so on. So we're going to be doing that. Now I'm going to create another bucket. Why I'm creating another bucket is, remember, we actually configured this bucket to have public access. So it's not going to be a very good example to use in this case. So I'll go ahead and create another bucket, still as the general purpose bucket. And I'll specify the name of the bucket. I'll accept all of the defaults. And then I'll go ahead and click on create bucket. So the bucket is created, and that's it there. I want to now upload the object I want to share. I'll go ahead and upload the object, and that's the object there. I'll go ahead and upload, and we can see here that our object currently is in the bucket there. Now you can only generate a pre-signed URL in this way by using either the command line interface or using the Cloud Shell environment. So I'm going to go ahead. I demonstrated how to use the command line interface earlier on. So for this particular demonstration, we're going to be using Cloud Shell to do that. So I have updated I've uploaded the file into the S3 bucket. So I want to go ahead and generate a pre-signed URL. So it's got a specific syntax, and I'll just go ahead and do that. So the syntax is that, you see, the syntax is AWS S3 pre-signed. You specify the bucket name and then the object name, and then you specify an expiration period. Now, currently the expiration period here, I've specified it to be 100, and that 100 is in seconds. So we'll go ahead and now launch another browser, and we can see here that we have access to the object. Remember, we have not specified anything else. Our bucket is still private. We've not done any other configuration, and just by generating a pre-signed URL, we are able to share the details that we want to share with whosoever we want to share it with. And the last aspects of this command here specifies that it should expire in 100 seconds. So we'll just wait for a few minutes, and after 100 seconds I'll just do a refresh, and let's see if that works. So I'll just refresh. Currently 100 seconds has not elapsed, so we'll still have access to that. And if we wait for a few more seconds or so, we are going to see that we will no longer be able to have access to that object because 100 seconds has elapsed, and the time that we want to have access to that object will no longer be available. So the access is lost. So let's go ahead and do a refresh again. And we can see here that at the expiration of the time we have specified, it gives us an access denied, and it gives us a reason. The reason being that our request has expired, and it gives us the time and all of that. So that is another way that we can grant access to our private, this time S3 bucket, and we'll do that. We've done that by simply generating a URL. All right, so we are going to be doing the next aspect of this video, which is to configure MFA delete. But first of all, I want to make it clear to you that you can only do MFA delete, or you can only configure MFA delete from the AWS command line interface or from the REST API. You cannot configure MFA delete any other way. You cannot even configure it using Cloud Shell in the AWS Management Console. So we are going to be using the command line interface to do that. Okay, first, there are some prerequisites. You've got to be, you have to use it, you can only configure MFA delete as a root user. So that means that if we are going to use the command line interface, we've got to go ahead and configure a profile for the root user in the AWS command line interface. That's one. The second thing is you've got to go ahead and enable MFA for the root user, and I'm going to show you how to do that. So we want to go to your account details and go and select security credentials, and you want to here come and be sure that multi-factor authentication is configured. You can see that I have MFA configured, and that's a virtual MFA there. That's my serial number there, and that has been configured for a while. Now, the next thing I want to do is I want to go ahead and create an access key. So I want to go ahead and note here that root user access keys are not recommended. That's not a recommended practice, but for the purpose of this demonstration, I'm going to configure it. Okay. Now it tells you that instead use alternatives like IAM role or identity center, gives you temporary rather than long-term credentials. But I'll just go ahead anyway. You've been warned, you shouldn't configure root user access keys for your root user. So I'll click on understand, and then I'll go ahead and create access keys. Now it prompts me, it gives me the details of the access key and the secret access key and all of that. I want to go ahead and download the CSV file. So it downloads the CSV file there, and that's all I want to do right here. The next configuration is going to be in the AWS Management Console. Now, another thing I want to point out to you before we get right into the whole matter is, if we come to S3, you should have created your bucket already. And the bucket I want to use for this configuration is the pre-signed URL demo bucket I use to configure pre-signed URLs. And I want to just point out to you here that the bucket currently does not have versioning enabled, and it also does not have multi-factor authentication delete enabled. So we are going to be going next into the AWS command line interface and configure configure a profile for the root user. From there, we are going to enable versioning for this bucket and enable multi-factor authentication delete. All right, so we are in the we are in the AWS command line interface, and we want to configure a profile for the root user that's going to allow us to run commands to be able to configure MFA delete. So let's get started. To do that, I want to go ahead and type the aws.configure. And then I want to specify the profile parameter. And I want to specify the root user as a profile. So if I run this, it's going to prompt me for a few things. It prompts me for the access key. So of course, I'm going to go ahead and enter the access key for the root user. So once I enter the access key, that's the access key there. I want to go ahead and click on enter. And it prompts me for the secret access key. And I also want to enter that. The default region, I'll just specify and the default output is JSON, and I am ready to configure the other aspects of MFA delete. But of course, this is the very first step that we need to do. So we are going to move on to the next steps. All right, so we've run the AWS configure command, and we specified our access key and secret access key, created a profile for the root user. So let's see if that profile works. First, I want to list the S3 buckets I've got in my account. So I'll go ahead and type AWS S3 ls, specifying the profile and then the profile name. And let's see what happens. Of course, we see that the two buckets I have is listed. Taking note that I have a specific bucket here called the pre-signed demo VBA bucket. So the next thing I want to do is I want to go ahead and, for example, I want to go ahead and set up the versioning for this bucket. So to do that, I'll just have to type the appropriate command. And once I do that, we will be able to specify versioning for that bucket. So let's see how that works. So I have here, let's quickly look at what the command does. We have the AWS S3 API, put bucket versioning right there. We specify the bucket name. We specify versioning enabled. Of course, the status for the versioning is enabled, and of course, we specify the profile. Okay, so go ahead and just enter this. And it tells us that we have, it doesn't give us any error. So my guess is that it has succeeded. But let's go ahead and see if we have versioning enabled. And to do that, we've got to type a command that's going to specify if we have enabled versioning. So we see here, the command this time says get bucket versioning, specifying the bucket name and specifying the profile that we're using to run. So let's see if versioning is enabled. We can see here that we have the status of versioning being enabled. So we have enabled versioning for this bucket. Now, the next and the final thing that we want to do is to now come and configure MFA delete. All right, so we want to configure MFA delete. We've enabled versioning already. So we go ahead and type the command. That's it there. The AWS SE API put bucket version. We specify the bucket parameter with the bucket name here. We specify version configuration, MFA delete enabled. We specify the ARN serial number. We need to put in a unique 6-digit code, which I'm going to generate right away. And then after that, we'll specify the profile being the root user. And then we'll go ahead and enter the profile and hit on enter. So let's go ahead and generate the 6-digit code. I'm going to take this ones out. And then I'm going to enter the code 515753. And all I've got to do here is I'll just go ahead and hit on enter. And of course, it tells us that it doesn't give us an error. So the next thing we want to do now is we want to go to the AWS Management Console to go and see if those two options are enabled. So I'll just go there right now. All right, so we are in the AWS Management Console. Remember that we had checked this pre-signed demo bucket earlier on, and neither versioning nor MFA delete was enabled. So I'll just go ahead and do a refresh. And then we'll come into the S3 bucket and go to the properties. And let's see, we can see, sure enough, we see now that bucket versioning is enabled and multi-factor authentication delete is also enabled. So our configuration worked. And of course, that means that if we tried to delete this bucket, we will not be able to delete it because MFA delete is enabled. Even if we tried deleting this bucket as a root user, we would need to prompt. We'll be prompted to put an MFA, a multi-factor authentication code in order to be able to delete this bucket. So this brings us to the end of this session, hoping that I was able to give you some very useful information. You were able to learn something new. Please go ahead and ask or make a comment in the comment section. And if this video appealed to you, please don't forget to like, subscribe, and share to get more content like this coming. Thank you very much as you do so.